Hey there, I'm Chris Benetti, host of the Smart Author podcast. In this episode, I speak with Jesse Krieger of Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, and we discuss pre-launching, launching, and marketing for your book's success. Jesse is an expert in everything from publishing to promoting. He has over 8 years of experience and has published over 100 books on entrepreneurship, health and wellness, self-help, and spirituality. Something I really enjoyed listening to was Jesse's insights on how to create marketing assets from your book's content. I think learning and understanding more about pre-launching and marketing your book is really important because it can help you create that initial traction and make those ongoing book sales. If you're currently stuck on ways to launch and can't think of a creative way to market your book, then this episode will be perfect for you, as it will give you the steps and tools you need to create a buzz around your book, pre-sale a ton of copies, and have marketing material for the next 12 months. Some of the main topics we will be covering today include how to create pre-launch offers to get a ton of pre-sales, creating a win-win relationship with partners so they promote your book launch, and using your book's content to create marketing material so you don't have to come up with new content. At the end of this episode, please make sure you visit our website where you can find the show notes plus all the links mentioned with Jesse. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you subscribe so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you're struggling with book sales, head over to smartauthormedia.com/audit to get a free audit and a clear plan to get your book sales back on track. Now, let's head over to this fantastic interview. Hey guys, we are here with Jesse from Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press. Jesse, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Chris. Great to be here.
My pleasure. So Jesse, tell everyone about yourself and your business in 30 seconds.
Sure. I was an author. I wrote a book called Lifestyle Entrepreneur, worked with two different publishers. First in Southeast Asia, became a best-selling author there, and then released the book in the US and the rest of the world. Through that experience, I got the idea of, wow, I would do book publishing in a really specific way if I ran the company. And then here we are 8 years later, published over 100 books on entrepreneurship, health and wellness, and self-help and spirituality.
Dude, that's so awesome. I think the whole process of publishing, launching, and ongoing marketing for their book is something that people often overlook or they shove off. They put all of their energy into writing and creating. And then by the time it comes to pre-launching their campaign or actually launching or ongoing marketing of their book, they basically fall flat. And unless they have someone to rely on, there's not anything that they can actually accomplish. And so I would love today to talk about the pre-launch campaign that you guys basically run people through and what that's all about.
Sure. So my view on a pre-launch campaign in the context of publishing a book is, especially if you're working with a publisher and if you're going to go through a distributed route or want to get a presence in retail, it's very important to drive pre-sales of the book in advance of the release date. Now, if you self-publish, you can just put your book on Amazon and then it's available. But with a publisher and scheduling release dates, a big part of the retailer's decisions is based on how many people are pre-ordering the book, sometimes weeks or months in advance of the actual release date. So with that in mind, a pre-launch campaign, in my view, a good one, looks like having a strong incentive for people to pre-order one copy of the book. And maybe that's like getting a bite-sized digital resource or getting access to part of a course or something you've created. Something that will add value to the reader, but it's not overkill. But then you want to look at something 5 to 10 books. So if you say, hey, pre-order 5 copies of my book or pre-order 10 copies of my book, you're going to get this. Now that could be a full training course. That could be access to a group coaching call or 1 month of a membership, something like that. Then you want to look at 20 to 25 books. That's where you can introduce something personal like a one-on-one call with the author, or a full training course, or a higher priced type of offering. And then you could look at something like 50 books, but I tend to jump up to like, what's a 100 to 250 book order look like? And with that, it's probably a corporate client, an organization, an association of some kind. And the positioning there is like, that could be, bring me in for a keynote and everybody in the audience will get a copy of the book. So maybe that's 150 books or something like that. So there you're not selling to an individual customer so much as a partner organization. So if you've got that set up, maybe 3 of those, like a 10 book, 25 book, and 100 book offer, that's half of the battle. I mean, then it's just about getting methodical on who are the buyers for this? How do I reach them? What kind of negotiation is involved? But then if you pick up a few 25 book pre-orders and a few 100 book pre-orders, you're like way ahead of the pack than if you just had the listing live and you shared it on social and 8 people pre-ordered your book. You see, so having a pre-launch campaign is about getting strategic on how you want to position your business offers in the context of the book launch, and using it as an opportunity to connect with businesses, organizational partners, companies effectively that would buy in wholesale, and using that as part of the strategy too.
Yeah, so it's almost like we are looking to start a new business in the sense of like, who are my ideal customers? Who's going to fit this new product that I'm releasing? And how can we go ahead and create relationships with them so that, we can get book pre-orders so that we can create a return of value to them as well, and basically create that relationship. So ongoing, you have like the demand for the book that you're releasing essentially.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned starting a new business. Writing and publishing a book is kind of equivalent to starting a business with how much work goes into it. But in my experience, you've got 2 camps. You've got somebody that's releasing a book and transitioning into being, an author and a semi-public figure, but doesn't have an existing audience or platform. The other side of that equation is somebody who's got a business, who's got a client base, who's got a platform, and now is bringing out a book to kind of go mass market. And there's a little variation on the strategy for either one, but they're both valid. I mean, everybody starts somewhere. So if you don't have a platform, but you have the experience and you write a book, then the whole book launch is the opportunity to start building your platform. Whereas if you've got a business, you've got offers and so forth, then the trick is how to position those, like we were talking about, while speaking to your audience about your book. And they both work. They're both designed to grow your audience, but one means you're starting with a little bit of a head start if you've already got a business and a platform.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you do a pre-launch campaign, when you were going through the process of finding ideal customers and making those pre-order packages, how do you know if you've done it successfully? How do you know if it's effective?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is that people start buying, and you'd see that, like, if you set it up where you say, okay, buy 20 copies of my book and you're going to get this course and something else, then people are going to need to forward their purchase confirmation or indicate that they've bought those books in order to be fulfilled on whatever the bonus is. So you'll see it's working as people are placing orders and letting you know to access the bonuses. You'll also know if it's working by, the feedback you get as you roll it out. If you send an email to your whole list, or you do a live on social, or you do a webinar, you'll be able to see the questions that come up, and you'll be able to gauge the uptake based on how many people you're reaching with each of those. So good news is it's pretty easy to see when you're on track with that. And if you reach a lot of people but don't convert a lot of sales, then you might have to rethink, what am I actually offering here, and why is it not super attractive? So I think the trick there is to like skew it more towards you're really hooking people up, instead of like trying to dress up something that sounds great, but really is only worth, 50, $100. If you've got something that's actually truly worth $500 or $1,000, and you're telling people to only buy 10 or 25 copies of the book to get it, now it's really in their favor to do that. So, from a business perspective, the book launch in a campaign like this, it can mean sacrificing some business revenue. Like if you just sold that thing for $1,000 instead of telling people to buy books, then you'd have $1,000. But if you're positioning it to sell a bunch of books, and you know that that's important leading up to your book coming out, then that's the trade-off, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think the more strategic way to look at it is, say you've got, let's say, a $2,000 training course, and it includes, some personal touch. It includes something more than just like a digital training. You could offer somebody the first 2 modules, or if it's a 3-month course, the first month of being in the group, and use that to sell in terms of books. And then once they're already going through it and they're in it and they're a month into it, then you could sell the remaining access directly for dollars instead of books. So if that makes sense, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to give away my signature program. Well, you don't have to. I mean, it's all optional, but you could give part of it away to drive book sales, and then convert somebody in at a different price where they're paying directly for the complete access.
Yeah, got it. So it's at the end of the day, it's all about the offer that you present in the pre-launch campaign. And if you're not converting, it's most likely either the offer's not right for the audience, or the offer isn't attractive enough, essentially.
Yeah, or you're not reaching enough people with your offer. So yeah, but one of those 3 is where I'd look first.
Okay, cool. So when I have gone through a pre-launch and it's coming up to the release of my book, what happens next?
Well, once you've gone through the pre-launch, I mean, that's one part of the overall strategy. The launch itself is, I look at it as an event, whereas I look at the entire process of writing, pre-publishing, and even having a published book. That's part of a long process. It's like a continuum. But the release date, that's an event, meaning we want to put our own separate focus on just the launch and the launch week, separate from the pre-launch and separate from what comes after. So the launch itself should look like as many partners as you get, promoting, sharing, emailing on that launch day, perhaps running some Amazon ads and having an ad campaign that's ready to drive interest, sales, search-based results for your book, perhaps running some social ads, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, just depending on which audience you're reaching, and looking at whether or not you want to do like a discount pricing strategy. Like a common thing with books is set the Kindle to like 99 cents for 1 or 2 days, drive a ton of traffic, get the boost in search or in bestseller rankings, and then pivot back to a full price book after that launch window. But just the same, you don't have to do a discount strategy. In fact, I'm more of a fan of a value add strategy. So say you had a pre-launch offer of, hey, pre-order a copy of my book and you're going to get this bonus. Well, maybe you have a different incentive just for the launch day or just for the launch week. You say, hey guys, just because my book's coming out and I want to make a big impact, I'm going to give you something really special for everybody that buys my book on this day or within this 48-hour window. So you could craft a separate offer that's only good for 1 or 2 days, but have somebody buy a full price book in order to access it. So that's what I call kind of the difference between a price discount, like a 99-cent Kindle, or a value add, which is you buy the book at full price, but now you're getting something that's worth 3 to 5 times more, maybe much more. And if you really unpack some of the bigger book launches and Wall Street Journal bestseller campaigns and things like that, they're typically offering kind of a crazy amount of value for a limited time only and reaching a massive audience with that offer. That's the equation to get a lot of traction in a very contained amount of time. And kind of by definition, it's not something you could do every week because it would lose, its impact once somebody saw that the second or third time.
Yeah. So it's about the true scarcity and urgency around the offer of the book launch.
Yeah, and just in the context of what we're talking about, you got pre-launch. Now we're talking about the launch itself, and there's two different strategies we talked about there with the price discount or the value add to drive a bunch of sales on that launch week. And then there's, once the book is out, which we can talk about next or get into, that's kind of like the third component of an overall book launch strategy. So should we dive into that?
Before we do, you mentioned partners for the launching phase. Is that partners that you typically will get introduced to or create a relationship with in the pre-launch phase, or is that like a different group of people that you would seek to promote the book when it launches?
It could be both. I mean, again, if you're coming from the place of like, you've got a business, you've got offers, you've got clients, then you probably have at least some partners. In which case I'd start there and expand the circle. Whereas if you don't really have a platform, you're rolling out your business offer while the book is coming out, then you want to really think about like, okay, who are the partners that I'd want, like create a dream 50 list or a dream 100 list of who else is in your space, who else is in your industry. And that could be looking at, people that have large audiences on social. It could be people that are speakers or keynote at different events that are topically related to your industry. It could be looking at like LinkedIn and who has a broad reach and audience there. One way or another, in almost any area of focus that you're going to be writing your book on, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people that already have some audience and established relationships in that space. And so that's what I mean by a partner, is like somebody that could bring me on to do a webinar. It could even be a podcast. Like I've been on a number of podcasts because I like the format. I like the long form content because it's similar to a book. But then I could ask you or a podcast host, hey, I've got a book coming out. Could you either bring me back on the show, or could we do a special offer for your audience where they're going to get a ton of value? That would be the setup to get like partner commitments. Like gotcha. I've got a background. I've run online summits, and with one summit, it was called Bestseller Summit Online. We had over 50 partners that were promoting it, and that's how we formed the audience for the summit. But there is an incentive for the partner. Like I either interviewed them on the summit, or they're getting a % of sales from people that they drove, or I agreed to promote them at a future date. So those are all things you can play with, but I find it's easiest just to ask, once you get into the conversation, to the partner, say, hey, what would make this a win for you? If I could have your support and you could promote for my book launch, like how could we make that work? And then see what they say.
Yeah, makes sense. So once we've gone through the launch now, like how do we ongoingly market the book? What are the most effective strategies for that?
One that I really like is, well, think of it this way. You've got a whole book. Let's say it's 200 pages. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to market it? I've got to do all these extra new things. But I always encourage authors, hey, use the content of your book as some of your best marketing. And you take that approach, you got 200 pages of content. Well, what can we do there? If you've recorded the audiobook, you could pull out 2 to 3 minute segments from the audiobook chapters, turn those into videograms or turn those into videos. And now you've got potentially dozens of pieces of content to use. Just the same, you could give away sample chapters to your book and then have an email sequence that introduces some of the key ideas in the book over 5, 10 days, 30-day action guide, whatever you want to position it as. And or we've had an author that read the entire book on video and made it into like 30 different videos, and they were all on YouTube. So if you wanted to, you could sit and watch the author read the whole book without even buying it. But then there's, of course, an incentive to buy the book, or maybe you just want a copy of the book at a certain point. So anyways, that's like 3 examples right there of how you can use the content of the book, because somebody that hasn't read it has no idea what's in it, right? They can just see the book description, maybe the preview on Kindle.
Yeah.
But if you start proactively dripping out parts of a chapter, key ideas, and all of that, using that content, whether in text, audio, and or video form, you've probably got the basis for 6 to 12 months of marketing without writing anything new other than teeing it up like, hey, here's an excerpt from chapter 2 of my book where I talk about this. Check it out and let me know what you think. Copy, paste, post.
Yeah, and I don't know
so
about you.
Now you've created, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I don't know about you, but if I listen to an audiobook and I really enjoy it, I'm going to go buy the physical as well, because it's different to have something to reference when it's physical. Audio chapters are fantastic in the way that, we have audio books these days is quite functional. But when you have the physical in hand as well, it's very easy to quickly reference, to highlight, to make notes, like especially with business books, right? So I always will go and buy like a second copy if I really enjoyed the first one that I listened to, or vice versa. If I have the physical, I might even go and buy the audio so I can listen to it when I'm walking or something like that, if it's a fantastic book. And I think, what you said there with the actual content being the marketing pieces, I think that's fantastic, because a lot of people will buy a book by its cover, right? Or by its description or its title, it's sexy. But there's a lot of people who, overlook that. They want to see if the book is going to be right for them from a content perspective. They want to get a vibe for the way that the author writes, or, in this case, speaks, or does video of the content. And so I feel like that's a really good opportunity for people to understand what the author's like and what the content's like. And if it's going to be a right fit for them to buy the book, it's almost like a guarantee that the book's going to be awesome in a sense.
You've got the right idea. Like, depending on what research you look at, some people need anywhere from 7 to 10 up to 50 touch points before they make a purchase. So if you're dripping out parts of a chapter of your book 2 to 3 times a week, somebody could be following that for a month and then finally like, all right, fine, I want the book, right? But they've now seen for weeks, wow, value, cool idea, perspective, interesting concept. And then wherever their individual tipping point is, your job as the author is just to say, this is an excerpt from my book, to get the whole thing, go here. And if you want to give them an extra incentive, for everybody that gets my book this week, I'm going to give you this audio training that I created that's worth $47. So you could rotate through different bonuses so that it stays fresh, but literally just share parts of your book and then incentivize people to buy the whole thing. And that itself is a marketing strategy that you could use for a long time. You mentioned one other thing, Chris, that's worth touching on, is you can use the book as a bonus for the book. So if you say, hey, if you buy a print copy of my book for this week, I'm going to give you the audio book for free. Cool. You're literally giving them the same thing they bought in another format. And you could do it in reverse as well. Like if you buy the audio book, I'll give you the electronic version for free.
Mm-hmm.
So then without even sending somebody a print copy, they get the audiobook. Now they've got a PDF or an EPUB, and now they can follow along or reference that or highlight that. So you could literally use the book as a bonus to drive a sale of the book, which I don't see many people doing, but I continue to think it's a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, typically when we do book funnels and things like that, we generally offer the audiobook as like the next thing they can buy, like an order bump to the main sale. And so, yeah, it's a no-brainer strategy that converts extremely well when you're asking them to pay for the additional thing. So, in the context of it being a free bonus, it's almost a no-brainer for anyone who wants to buy, because a lot of people typically will consume content in different ways. I'm much more of a listener than a reader personally, so I always look for the audiobook wherever possible.
Yeah, and that illustrates another point, is like it's pretty evenly split between people that prefer audiobook like really strongly, purists that want the physical copy of the book, and people that have either a Kindle Unlimited subscription or just like digital. Ultimately, it's all the same content, but it drives home the point that you really should have your book available in all formats. Mm-hmm. So like if you went through the whole process of writing a book, go that extra 10% and record the audiobook as well. Because like otherwise you're leaving sales on the table. If you don't have a format, some people that really love or prefer audiobook, and some people need it. Like if you're blind or if you have some other issue that would prevent you from just reading the book, then it's not like you'll pick up the sale. Oh, they don't have the audiobook, I'll just get the paperback. So you could actually be losing sales if you don't have those formats available.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do the marketing side, like we've spoken about a lot of ways that you can create content to potentially promote organically. I feel like a lot of the content that we've spoken about here is extremely beneficial and could be used in conjunction with paid advertising. When you have your book, what are the best ways to effectively market potentially with paid advertising, but still remain profitable? Do you have any suggestions or tips regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say is it's quite difficult to have a profitable paid traffic campaign if the book is the only offer. And so with that being said, if you could give it a shot, we've found that we could get sample chapter opt-ins for less than $2 per lead. So, okay, if that's true, and then we get a decent conversion to buy the book, then those campaigns could be net positive just from a book sale. But if we're spending $2 for a lead to drive a $10 or $15 or $20 book sale, then we've got to get pretty high conversions, knowing what we'll actually make from that book sale for just that alone to do the trick. Now, on the other hand, if you've got like a short funnel or a mini sequence that unpacks the sample chapters over a 5-day email sequence, adds value, drives a sale of the book, and then positions, hey, I've also got a coaching program, I've also got this and this, then you can look at, okay, what's my total customer value over 2 weeks or 30 days?
Yeah.
Even if you're only promoting or marketing the book, sample chapters, something around the book, but then the rest of the funnel has a higher price offer, then that can work. But otherwise, it's admittedly quite difficult, if not very difficult, to scale up a paid traffic campaign where your only ROI is book sales.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the business authors, generally speaking, will go into writing a book anyway as a entry point into their world and a tool to help ascend readers into their core business customers as well. And that's, usually the smart author audience. Like that's the type of clientele that, I work with, and I assume that you work with as well. And so ultimately, the book is a really fantastic marketing and promotion tool that can help you drive back-end sales into your core business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the majority of authors we work with are either business owners, doctors, health and wellness experts, or in self-help and spirituality genres. And in almost all cases, they do have other offers, or they do have an existing business where the book becomes a new front door, a new way to serve their existing audience, but also a great way to reach new people. Because you got to figure, if somebody discovers your book and that's the first thing that they discover about you, and they even read half of it, then they're like, this person totally knows what they're talking about, I want to hire him. That's the best ascension I've ever seen. I mean, that's why I love book publishing and all of this, is once you've taken the time to create a good book, those are your defining thoughts on the topic. So if somebody reads that, then they're getting the best perspective you have to offer. And that, from a customer standpoint, that's like a ton of free or super low cost value before deciding if you want to work with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like, if you look at an expert that has a book and somebody who has expertise but no book, the person who has a book is more likely to get booked on media, new clients, opportunities. There's many speaking opportunities in America where you will only be considered if you have a book. So sometimes it's a criteria to get access to opportunities.
Yeah, gotcha. So I'm going to wrap up the episode here, Jesse. Before we go, what's your favorite business book?
Well, one of them right now is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the name suggests, like, what's the one thing you can do to move your business forward? And in the book, he asked his team to create a list of 100 things that they could do to move his real estate brokerage forward. And Gary Keller writing a book was the number one thing. So I always think that that's unique for an author to hear, but it's great advice and a great book for anybody.
Yeah, fantastic book. And I was actually recommended The One Thing by Alex Sharfin back in the day, and great read. Anyway, Jesse, thank you so much.
Alex.
Yeah, Alex is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and giving so much value. I have like a full checklist of everything now, from pre-launch to launching to actually marketing, ongoing the book, and some tools, tips, and strategies that anyone who's listening can try and get, amazing results from. So really awesome for you to give so much away. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Damn, what an awesome episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing on your podcast platform of choice so you get notified every single time a new episode releases. And if you're struggling with your book sales, head over to smartauthormedia.com/audit to get a free audit of your book sales, to see where we can help you bridge the gap between not many sales to a lot of sales. It's a free resource call that we have together where I give you some clear action steps that you can take to take your stuff from broken to selling. I'll see you over there. Thanks again for listening.